A reading from Luke 23. It was now noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, when the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. When the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said, "Certainly this man was innocent." And when all the crowds who had gathered there for this spectacle saw what had taken place, they returned home beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. Some thoughts from the centurion at the foot of the cross. It was dark. It was very, very dark, like the dead of night, as black as sin. Nothing strange in that, of course, except that it was noon, the sun having blazed out of a cloudless sky just moments before. It was simply another ordinary day up until then, the usual routine executions to get through, and we watched impassively as the latest batch of ne'er-do-wells had suffered in the heat, crying out for water as they squirmed and writhed in agony. Did I feel anything from them? Not a thing. You get used to the screams after a time. But there was something about one of them this time which couldn't help but catch my attention. For there was a calmness about him, even you might say an air of authority, which left me flabbergasted, unable to believe quite what I was seeing. He was in a terrible state. His back was an ugly mass of lacerations where the whip had bitten into him. The blood oozed from his head, his hands, his feet. Yet some, it seemed, felt even then he hadn't endured enough. They mocked, insulted, rebuked, tormented him, enough to make any ordinary man return their curses. Yet, and can you believe this? I heard him with my own ears cry out, asking God to forgive them. Amazing. And when he died, it was more uncanny still, for I swear he drew his final breath and there was a look of triumph in his eyes, for all the world as though he believed that ghastly death of his had some meaning, some hidden purpose. Heaven knows what that could have been. Yet it was the darkness which got me the most. The way, without warning, literally out of the blue, the skies closed in as he hung there, and a cold and eerie hush seemed to cover the world. Coincidence, some call it, but not me. I saw enough to convince me that this man was special, innocent without question. Almost, you might say, the Son of God. It's not like me to say that, for I'm not a sentimental type, no time usually for all that nonsense. But as I watched the man suffer, and when I saw him finally die, it was then that the light went out for me. The world suddenly more black than I had ever seen before. It was dark. So very, very dark.